Today is Wednesday, November 6th, and I'm just wondering, what the hell are the Dallas Cowboys thinking?
And now, a word from our title sponsor.
Are all financial advisors fiduciaries? Fewer than you think. Not knowing could reduce your lifestyle. Hi, I'm Mitch Kramer, founder and CEO of Fluent Financial. A fiduciary is a regulatory term to reduce conflicts of interest in wealth management. A fiduciary always works in your best interest. A non-fiduciary advisor might put their compensation or company ahead of yours. At Fluent Financial, we are certified financial planners acting as fiduciary advisors. To learn more, go to fluentfinancial.com or Fluent Financial's YouTube channel.
What do you want from your favorite restaurant? Fantastic personal service, a cheery, welcoming, spotless atmosphere, and great food. The primest of beef, wagyu and lamb, incredibly fresh seafood, lobster, salmon, shrimp. Hall of Fame food from a Hall of Fame restaurant. 2 locations of Bob's Steak and Chop House, the original Bob's on Lemon Avenue, and the gorgeous new Bob's at Craig Ranch, McKinney. Mary and I are Crest Cadillac people. For what, about 15 years now?
That's about right. Crest Cadillac XT4. Perfect size, perfect ride for us.
Crest Cadillac at 121 on the Tollway in Frisco now has terrific offers on the Cadillac LYRIQ and the soon-to-be-available all-electric Escalade. GM Mike Brusen's team is fantastic to work with, so join Mary and me as
Crest Cadillac people.
I promise you, this podcast is not evolving into a simply Dallas Cowboys podcast. But there's so much to talk about today regarding the Cowboys. I promise you, Friday, I'll have the Rangers plan for the offseason. Well, maybe my plan. And next week, the evolution of the NBA. But right now, let's go to the Cowboys. They simply demand our attention. First, the bad news, and then the I don't believe it news. Dak Prescott's headed for injured reserve. His hamstring injury suffered in the loss to Atlanta on Sunday is much worse than first feared. That means he will miss at least 4 games. When you're placed on the IR, you must stay on our IR at least 4 games. Those 4 games are Philadelphia, Houston, Washington, and the Giants. The earliest Dak can be back is game 13 against Cincinnati. And if this season is absolutely lost at this point, be careful about bringing Dak back. He's a quarterback into his 30s, and hamstring injuries are tricky. You don't want a hamstring to become chronic. If there's no reason to bring him back at that point, don't bring him back. That means right now this is Cooper Rush's team, at least at the start of this package of games with Dak being out. But if it were me, I'd have a lot of moves I'd make. First of all, yes, Cooper Rush should take over against the Eagles. But I would consider at some point as we move along, moving Trey Lance into the starting quarterback. Both Rush and Lance are free agents after the season. The Cowboys have not gotten a glimpse, not a single play from Trey Lance in his Cowboy career. Is he capable of being a solid number 2 quarterback? We know Cooper Rush is a good backup quarterback, but is Trey Lance fit for that role? Well, we could get some game action here, couldn't we? Next, other moves on the offense. First of all, a small one. I would cut either Zeke Elliott or Dalvin Cook. And I would move Deuce Vaughn, the 6th-round draft choice from last year, up onto the active roster. I don't know if Vaughn can play in this league. I think we all have our doubts, but it's time to find out. And if the answer is no, then you move on from him in the offseason also. I would bench Terrence Steele at right tackle. He's certainly not having a very good year. And I'd try to find out if Asim Richards can play right tackle. Richards was a fifth-round draft choice last year. Right now, he's a backup at left tackle, but that's not a problem moving from left to right, basically. Can Richards play? Even if Steele's back as the starter next year, it's important to know you can trust Asim Richards or not trust Asim Richards. At left tackle, I'm sorry, I've seen enough for a long while of Tyler Guyton. Tyler Guyton has 3 problems, the first-round draft choice out of Oklahoma. They are the 3 Ps: practice habits, penalties, and performance. He's had problems in all 3 of those areas. Lots of penalties, poor performance. And a couple of weeks ago, we were told by the club itself about his poor practice habits. Tyler Smith was drafted to be the left tackle on this team, replacing Tyron Smith whenever Tyron moved on. Well, Tyron's moved on, and left tackle is such a critical position. Move Tyler Smith there and keep him there. Move TJ Bass in left guard and start to retrain Tyler Guyton as a guard. A lot of people I talked to before the draft thought that's what he'd be in the NFL, a guard. Next, let's go to the defensive side. I told you the other day that I certainly did not want to blame the Atlanta loss on one player. But the numbers regarding defensive tackle Mazi Smith are astoundingly bad. Mazi Smith was a first-round draft choice last year, and he played so poorly. But we were told, the change of scheme from Dan Quinn's team on defense to Mike Zimmer's team on defense, that would give Mazi a chance. I don't know a word to describe how bad he's been. But let me let Pro Football Focus do that for you. They grade players in the NFL. They grade everybody. Linemen, defensive backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, everything. This year, 118 defensive tackles have played enough plays to be amongst those graded by Pro Football Focus. Across the league, 118 defensive tackles. Where does Mazi Smith rank? 118th. Dead last. Pro Football Focus suggests the worst defensive tackle in the NFL. I would deactivate him. I don't care who plays. Let the veteran Linval Joseph, who's been okay, let him have the job. But send a clear message to Mazi Smith. Start to play or hit the road. And this week, apparently Micah Parsons is coming back, and maybe cornerback Deron Bland. I'd be very careful here. Each is coming off a significant injury. Make certain they are absolutely healthy enough. Don't rush them back in the smallest degree. Again, you don't want this to become a chronic injury for either one of them. And at 3-5 and the season disappearing and Prescott gone, you want to make certain you don't do anything that involves lessening their future as NFL players, because they're both really, in Parsons' case, really, really good players. Now, about the one Cowboy trade they made on Tuesday. What in God's name are they thinking? They acquired Carolina wide receiver Jonathan Mingo. He was Carolina's second-round draft choice out of Ole Miss in 2023. The 39th player taken in the draft. That's supposed to be a terrific player. Well, last year as a rookie, he started 14 games, and he was far less than impressive. 43 catches. This year, he started only 5 games, but he played in 9. And in those 9 games, he has 12 catches. Over his 2 years, he has been targeted 111 times and has caught only 55 passes. He's caught only one half of his targets. That is awful. And his number of touchdowns, that would be none. None in the NFL. Now, I'm going to grant you this. Carolina's a dreadful franchise. But right now, Carolina's planning for their future. And they're willing to get rid of a second-round wide receiver from last year's draft? What does that tell you what Carolina's thinking about Jonathan Mingo? But Dallas gave a 4th-round draft choice for him. And at that, a good 4th. Dallas's 4th-round draft choice could well be in the top 15 in the 4th round this coming year's draft. Maybe in the top 12, top 10. Who knows? But for that 4th rounder, they get Mingo and a 7th-round pick. So what is Mingo here? Well, CeeDee Lamb's the number 1 receiver here. And there seems to be a growing sentiment that Jalen Tolbert is moving into being a pretty solid number 2. And Gadget Man Cavante Turpin right now is number 3. Or is that last year's 7th rounder, Jalen Brooks? And what happens when the solid veteran Brandon Cooks comes back off the injury list? They gave a 4 for this player? Now, hey, Dallas may well have had wonderful scouting reports on him in Mississippi. They may have really liked him in the draft last year. But doesn't a 1.5 performance count for something? Couldn't they have gotten him for a 5th? Or maybe even a 6th and Carolina doesn't give him the 7th? I think this is about Jerry Jones. I think this trade is all about Jerry Jones. He's feeling enormous heat. His team is collapsing before his eyes. And forget the injury to Prescott. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the team that had Dak Prescott. And earlier this year had Parsons and had DeMarcus Lawrence. And that team was beaten up by the Saints. It fell 3 touchdowns plus behind Baltimore. But yes, Mingo does have 2.5 years of control left on his contract. But what good is that if he's the number 4 wide receiver here? You can find a number 3 or number 4 wide receiver any place in the draft next spring. Wide receivers are the most prevalent position in the draft. But the Cowboys gave up a number 4 to get him. Remember, they didn't have a number 4 in this spring's draft because they gave that up for Trey Lance. And a number 4 in this spring's draft would have gotten them a solid rookie running back to pair with Rico Dowdle. But Jerry, I think, understood the kind of backlash he'd feel if he did nothing. But looking at this deal, the Cowboys should have done nothing.
Today's episode brought to you by Fluent Financial. Retire sooner, better lifestyle. And by Crest Cars. There's good, there's better, and then there's Crest. By Star Power. Love where you live. And by Bob's Steak and Chop House.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Just Wondering with Norm Hitzges. If you enjoyed what you heard, please hit follow, and a fresh new episode will be delivered to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you know someone who might enjoy our work, please share it with them. I'm Norm Hitzges, and I'm always just wondering about something.
And I'm Mary Hitchkus, and I'm just wondering too.